Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and I run the blog The Homemade Host. This is my first long form video. All I've done up to this point is Instagram and blogs, so I'm really excited to get started. This is, to give you a little bit of background, this is all about how I stripped and repainted a china cabinet. I had done a little bit of research, well, a lot of research before I started, and didn't really find everything that I needed, and I learned a lot along the way just through trial and error, and I want to share my best tips with you. So let's get started. All right, to give you a little bit of a background, I bought this china cabinet, and when I saw it, I realized it had a lot of paint on it. It was looking very gunky. There were a lot of drip spots, just paint filled in to all of the grooves and the detailed areas. And so with it being a china cabinet, it's obviously a very large piece, and it is a bamboo looking china cabinet, and so it has lots of little grooves and edges that I had to get into. So I went to YouTube to look up how to strip paint, and they made it look very easy, and it was not. So here are my best tips for how to strip a large and very detailed piece of furniture. Or, I mean, this will work with any piece of furniture, but specifically a large and detailed piece of furniture. Step one, take the piece of furniture apart as much as possible. If there are doors, any sort of hardware, take all of it off and all of it apart as much as possible, because you're going to want to work in sections when you strip. So if there's anything that you can unscrew, take apart, go ahead and do that right at the beginning. Now, alluding back to what I said earlier, step two is you're going to want to apply it in sections. Now, this is something I did not do, and I wish I would have kind of learned from experience. So what happens when you apply the stripper, you want it to stay moist. When you are doing a large piece of furniture and you're scraping off the other sections, the sections you haven't gotten to yet can become dried out, and it doesn't work as well. So my advice would be to do one side at a time if you're working on a detailed big piece of furniture. So for example, I have this china cabinet. It really had 3 sides for me to work on. If I could go back in time, I would do one side, then the next, then the next. The paint stripper that I used is called Citrus Strip. I tried both Citrus Strip and then a regular liquid stripper. The liquid ones smell more, and I think they're a little harder to use. Citrus Strip was much easier. I recommend the Citrus Strip. What you do to use the Citrus Strip is just apply it with a paintbrush, brush it on, let it sit. I definitely recommend, I saw this in a lot of videos and I recommend it, once you apply the stripper, wrap it with saran wrap, and that will keep in the moisture, and then you're going to leave it overnight. Leave it at least 8 to 12 hours, and then go in and strip it, which takes us to step 3, remove the paint. So once you've let it sit for 8 to 12 hours, take the saran wrap, plastic wrap off, and you're going to take a plastic putty knife. It does need to be plastic because metal could ruin the wood. And you take that plastic putty knife and just scrape it off. It should come off really easily. You'll get, depending on how much paint is already on the piece, for example, my piece had 5 layers of paint, so I didn't get all of it off, but you'll probably, during this stage, get 80 to 100% of the paint off. And we'll get to, in a moment, how to get the rest off. Some other tips for this section is I definitely recommend gloves. Just get a big pack of disposable gloves because you'll go through them really quickly. It'll help protect your nails, your hands. It's just messy and gooey and gross. Get gloves. The other tip that I have that I did not mention is when you're stripping the paint after you've let it sit for 8 to 12 hours, when you are first doing the initial strip, is to get some kind of container that you don't mind throwing away. I just usually reuse something. Like I had a plastic container that my pre-washed salad came in, and that way I could scrape the paint directly in there because it's going to be messy, it's going to be gooey. So just be prepared to clean up the paint that you're scraping off, because I didn't really think about that until I had started. Step 4. This is something that I didn't know at first and had to go back and research and learn through trial and error. You're gonna scrub the rest of the paint off with paint stripper after wash. What I found to work best is to get a toothbrush, dip it in the paint stripper after wash, and scrub it, circular motion. Scrub, and then after it's kind of gotten wet, then wipe away with a paper towel. And so you're just gonna do that over and over again. Scrub with a toothbrush, wipe away, scrub, wipe. You're gonna wanna, after each wipe, you're gonna wanna dip the toothbrush back in the paint stripper after wash to get more on the brush. And that should get most of the leftover paint off, as well as any residue. Once you strip the piece with just the putty knife, even if it comes off the paint, it's gonna be a little bit sticky. And so washing it with this paint stripper after wash will help with that. And I would just do this all over until you've gotten most of the paint off. At this point, all of it might come off. If not, we'll wait till the next step and we'll get the rest off. Step 5 is to sand the piece. So once you've applied the citrus strip, you've knocked it off with the putty knife, and you've hit it with the paint stripper after wash, anything left is going to be sanded. And you're gonna wanna do this probably anyway to prep the piece to either stain it or repaint it. So I would start off with a medium grit sandpaper for the pieces that have paint still stuck to them. And depending on the part of the piece of furniture, you could use an electric sander if it's a big, large area that you can get into easily. If it is a small detailed area, for example, I had these bamboo grooves. If it's a detailed area like that, you're gonna wanna do it probably by hand. So either way works as long as you can get into that area really well. And then this should get the paint off, or if it does not, if there's just little specks of paint left over, as long as it's smooth, you'll be able to paint over it. I wouldn't worry about it too much. If there are areas that are really bugging you at this point that you still need to get off, what I do is I combine the last step with the sanding. So, okay, I wanted to show you an example of what I was kind of talking about with the toothbrush. And so as you can see here, I cleaned off the piece with the toothbrush and the paint stripper after wash, wiped it down with a paper towel, and then I got something to kind of pick at it since it was soft a little bit at this point because of the paint stripper after wash, and wiped it down a little bit more. And then I went in with the toothbrush again. You're just trying to continually repeat this process, and you'll be able to get off a little bit at a time while you're doing this. And then I finally hit it with some sandpaper, and doing all of this, just repeating these steps, should help you get off those really stubborn, hard to get paint areas. As you can see, I had these little ridges in the bamboo piece that was hard to get, but I got them. And so you can keep repeating that, you know, scrub it with the paint stripper after wash, wipe it away, sand it, try and pick the paint out a little bit, and just keep repeating until it gets out, and that should help. That's what worked for me. And like I said, I started off with 5 layers of paint, so that should work. And that's really the end of the stripping process. I mean, from there, you just continue to clean it. You might want to do more of that paint stripper after wash to make sure that there's no sticky residue areas, and then clean the piece of furniture as you normally would to prep for paint. And that's really kind of it. I know it sounds super simple. I made it sound simple. It took a long time for me just because I was having to get in those detailed areas and repeat those steps 4 and 5 multiple times in small little detail areas. So my advice is to be patient and to keep trying. And really the paint stripper after wash, I swear, is the key. And getting a tool brush and lots of little things you can wipe away the paint. So that's an overview of how I stripped a large piece of furniture that was very detailed. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer them.